Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations. Today I'm going to show you how to create a twisted easel card with a soft spring design, and I'm going to show you how to use distress oxide inks to create a watercolor-like look on your stamped images. I'll be using the Spread Your Wings stamp collection, which includes some of the gorgeous big butterflies, a few smaller butterflies, florals, and 4 sentiments. This also has a set of coordinating dies that I'll be using. For this card, you're going to need a piece of cardstock cut at 8.5 inches by 4 1/4 inches, one 4-inch piece of pattern paper or cardstock, a piece of cardstock or pattern paper cut at 1 inches by 3 inches. This is going to hold the sentiment, so if you need to make it a little larger or smaller, you can do that. You will also need some pieces of cardstock to stamp the images onto. We're not going to do any coloring today, but if you plan on shading your images in, make sure you're using a cardstock or paper that is thick enough to stand up on the card base. I will be adding some pattern paper to the inside of my card. If you wish to do that, it will need to be cut at 4 inches by 4 inches. The larger piece of cardstock is going to be our card base, so I'm going to score this at 4 1/4 inches and fold it in half. Then we're going to score it from the top fold line to the opposite corner and fold diagonally. The 4-inch pattern paper that goes on the front of the card will be cut in half diagonally. When you cut this, you want your diagonal cut to go from the top left to the lower right corner so that the pattern is correctly placed on the front of the card. On this pattern, it doesn't really matter, but there are some, like this leaf pattern, that if I were to cut it in the wrong direction, the pattern would look a little bit off on the front of the card. I like to start my diagonal cuts in the center and move up, then down. This prevents my blade from catching the corner of the paper and creating a tear on the edge. I'm going to adhere my pattern papers in place using a little liquid adhesive. Again, make sure your patterns match up and you're going the right direction. I will also be adding some pattern paper to the inside of the card. This is optional. The inside of the card will be showing when this is propped up, so pattern paper creates a more finished look. Alright, I'm going to stamp the images for my card. I'm going to be creating more of a monochromatic card today. As much as I enjoy shading in images, I know that some of you are not a fan of coloring, so we're going to keep this really simple and elegant. For this project, I need 2 floral images, 1 butterfly, and the sentiment. After stamping the floral pieces, I'm going to stamp the butterfly in the same color of ink, and then I'm going to bring in some more colors to create that blend that looks a little bit like a watercolor wash. To create this look, I'm going to tap the edge of my ink pad onto the stamp in various places. I am rotating that stamp pad so I don't end up with just a bunch of lines across the stamp. Once I stamp that second layer of ink, you can see small flecks of color in that gray-blue. Now I'm going to add a 3rd layer with a little bit darker color. Again, I'm just tapping the side of my ink pad onto the stamp and then I'll press this down. When I lift up the stamping platform door, you're going to see a beautiful mix of blues. And as these dry, they're going to have a chalk-like finish. This is a great alternative to coloring in your images. The Distress Oxide inks are a pigment dye hybrid, so you will have to wait for that ink to set before you cut everything out with the dyes. If you want to, you could add some clear embossing powder and heat set these to create a raised look. As we add these stamped images to the card base, there are 2 things you want to remember. Your images are going to need to look aligned while the card is flat and while it's popped up. If I were to place the butterfly so it looked like this while the card was popped up, it's going to look almost upside down when the card is flat. So you may need to take a few moments to arrange your images to figure out how it's going to look both flat and popped up. When you adhere everything down, make sure you don't add any adhesive above the diagonal fold. If you do, the card's not going to bend properly and pop up. Now you can see as I'm adding all of these images, it's creating a nice layered look. The stamp set also includes some smaller butterflies, so you could create a variety of layered looks using those florals, the large butterflies, and the smaller images. Off camera, I stamped my sentiment in black ink, and I'm going to layer this over some cardstock. This sentiment is going to be this stopper that holds the folded portion of the card upright, so I need to place a little bit of foam under it before I adhere it in place. It's going to need to sit at a diagonal, which might look a little odd when the card is opened, but you could fill in the space with a few of those smaller butterfly images or write in a sentiment. Once everything's adhered in place, you could add loops of twine, enamel dots, or sequins. Let me share how I decorated this card, and I'll share another one that I made in a different color. Off camera, I tucked some silver thread behind the butterfly, added a few gems and some enamel dots to this blue card. I also created another card using some green patterns and inks. This one also has a lovely spring feel to it. On the wings of this one, I added some micro pearls and stitched around the edges to give this card some texture. Both of these designs are perfect for spring with their bright colors, textures, and patterns. I love the soft feel of the Distress Oxide inks and how it gives them that chalk-like or watercolor-like finish, and it doesn't require any coloring. I hope that this project inspired you to try something new. If you're one who likes to pin photos to inspiration boards, I have added still shots to my website and in the Not Too Shabby Friends Facebook group for you to use. Thank you for joining me for another paper crafting project. If you have any questions about this project or the supplies I used, feel free to leave me a comment. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.